I stood in the empty office of our family company at 6:30 in the morning watching the sun creep through the warehouse windows. 12 years. That is how long I had been here since I was 18 years old. This place was not just where I worked. It was where I grew up, where my father taught me everything about running a business, where I learned what it meant to build something with your own hands. But today felt different. Something in the air had shifted. My father had texted me late last night, "Come to my office at 8. We need to talk about your brother, Dylan." My stomach tightened. My brother had never cared about this company, never cared about anything that required actual commitment. I had no idea that conversation would be the beginning of the end. But before I tell you how everything fell apart in just 72 hours, I need to ask you something. Where are you watching this from? Drop a comment, and let me know what city or country you are in. And if you have ever felt undervalued at work or in your family, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about standing up for yourself when loyalty gets taken for granted. Because this story is not just about a family business. It is about what happens when hard work means nothing compared to blood. Now let me take you back to that morning when everything started to unravel. I need to give you some background first. I started working for my father when I was still in community college, taking business classes at night while learning the real work during the day. Our company was not glamorous. We ran a small manufacturing operation that made custom metal parts for local factories and industrial clients. My father Frank had started it 35 years earlier in a rented garage with one lathe and a dream. By the time I joined, we had 15 employees and a solid reputation. I did not start at the top. Frank made that clear from day one. I swept floors, organized inventory, learned how to operate every machine in our shop. I worked in quality control, checking each piece that went out our doors. I answered customer calls at 7 in the morning and stayed until 8 at night, making sure orders were ready on time. Slowly, over years, I moved up. At 25, Frank promoted me to operations manager. I was the one who kept everything running. The person clients called when they had questions. The one who knew which machines needed maintenance, which employees were struggling, which orders needed priority attention. My relationship with my father was good. More than good. He used to clap me on the shoulder at the end of long days and say, "You are the backbone of this place, Oakley. I could not do this without you." I believed him. I was proud. This company felt like our shared achievement, something we had built together. Then there was my brother Dylan. 4 years younger than me, and we could not have been more different. Dylan was the kind of guy who always had a new passion project. At 22, he wanted to be a DJ, spent 6 months buying equipment and playing small gigs before deciding it was not for him. Then he got into graphic design, took some online courses, landed 2 freelance jobs, and quit because clients were too demanding. After that came cryptocurrency trading. He lost $3,000 in 2 months and declared the whole market was rigged. I never resented Dylan for any of this. Honestly, I just could not understand him. How could someone keep starting things and never finish? Our mother Patricia had died 5 years ago from cancer. Before she passed, she spent hours worrying about Dylan, wondering if he would ever find his path. After she died, Frank seemed to carry that worry for both of them. He felt responsible for fixing Dylan, for making him into something stable. That morning I walked into my father's office at exactly 8 o'clock. Dylan was already sitting there. That should have been my first warning sign. My brother never woke up before 10 if he could help it. And he was wearing a suit. A cheap one that fit poorly, but still. Dylan in a suit was like seeing a cat swim. Technically possible, but deeply unnatural. He looked uncomfortable, tugging at his collar. Frank did not waste time. "Dylan is joining the company," he announced. I felt surprise, sure, but not alarm. Not yet. I figured Dylan would start where I had started at the bottom. Learning the basics, proving himself. "That is great," I said, meaning it. "When does he start? I can set him up with Harold in the warehouse, or maybe with the inventory system." Frank shook his head. "He will be working directly with you, learning your role." Something cold touched my spine. "You mean he will shadow me, learn the operations, more than that?" Frank leaned back in his chair. "I want you to train him to eventually slide into your position." The words hung in the air like smoke. Slide into my position. Eventually. What did that mean? I glanced at Dylan, who was staring at his hands, not meeting my eyes. "Dad, I do not understand. Are you saying you want Dylan to become operations manager?" "I am not getting any younger, Oakley." I need to know both my sons can run this business. Dylan deserves a real chance. A real opportunity. You have had 12 years to learn and grow. Now it is his turn. My throat felt tight. 12 years. I had spent 12 years building this operation from the ground up, and now my father wanted me to hand it over to someone who had never shown interest in anything beyond the next easy path. But I tried to be reasonable. I tried to understand. Okay, sure, I can teach him. But this takes time, Dad. Years, probably. Operations management is not something you learn in a few weeks. Frank nodded, but something in his expression made me uneasy. I know it takes time. That is why we are starting now. Dylan is committed this time. Right, son? Dylan finally looked up, forcing a smile. Yeah. Totally committed. I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe my brother had finally found something he wanted to stick with. I wanted to believe my father was not about to push me aside for someone who would quit the moment things got difficult. So I agreed. I told myself it would be fine. Dylan had quit everything else in his life. Why would this be different? But I was wrong. The first week of Dylan's training told me everything I needed to know. He showed up at 9:30 on Monday. 10 o'clock on Tuesday. Wednesday, he texted at 8:45 saying traffic was bad, then strolled in at 10:15 with a coffee from a shop 20 minutes away. Each morning, I tried to be patient. I showed him our inventory system, explained how we tracked customer orders from initial contact through production and delivery. I walked him through quality standards, introduced him to key employees, explained why certain clients needed special attention. Dylan spent most of his time looking at his phone. When I asked him to help check an order, he sighed like I had asked him to move a mountain. Does not this seem like a lot of standing? He complained on Thursday afternoon. We had been reviewing parts in the warehouse for 30 minutes. 30 minutes. I had spent entire days on my feet when I was learning this job, but I bit my tongue and kept teaching. We had an important order for Patterson Industrial, one of our oldest and most valuable clients. They needed custom brackets for a new assembly line, specific measurements, tight tolerances. I was explaining the specifications to Dylan when his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then at me. Can we not just automate this stuff? I stared at him. Automate what exactly? All of this. He waved his hand vaguely. The measuring, the checking, the whatever. There has to be software or something. Dylan, this is custom work. Every piece is different, based on what the client needs. Yes, we use software for design and precision cutting, but someone still has to oversee the process, check quality, make sure what we promised matches what we deliver. He shrugged. Sounds like we are doing it wrong then. Something inside me cracked. I kept my voice level. We have been doing it this way for 30 years. It works. Our clients trust us because we deliver exactly what we promise. Maybe that is the problem. Maybe you are too stuck in old ways. I did not respond. I just walked away before I said something I would regret. Later that afternoon, Harold, one of our longest-tenured machinists, pulled me aside near the loading dock. Harold had worked for my father for 23 years. He was 61 years old, had hands scarred from decades of metalwork, and knew more about production than anyone else in the building. Your brother ain't cut out for this, he said quietly. I defended Dylan automatically. Give him time. He is still learning. Harold gave me a long look. Time ain't gonna fix what is missing, Oakley. That boy does not want to be here. And your daddy is making a mistake. I wish I had listened to him. The second week, everything escalated. Frank started coming to the office less frequently. He would call Dylan in the mornings, ask how things were going, then stay away for most of the day. Meanwhile, every suggestion Dylan made, every half-formed idea he threw out, Frank approved over the phone without asking for my input. On Tuesday, Dylan decided he wanted to change our supplier for raw aluminum. We had worked with Miller Supply for 15 years. Their quality was consistent, their delivery reliable, their pricing fair. But Dylan found a new company online that was 20% cheaper. We should switch, he announced during a morning meeting with just the two of us. No, I said flatly. Miller has never let us down. Cheaper suppliers cut corners. We cannot risk quality issues for 20% savings. You are just resistant to change. I am resistant to stupid decisions that will cost us client relationships. Dylan called Frank. Right there in front of me, he called our father and explained his idea. Frank listened, then said the words that made my stomach drop. Let him try, Oakley. You need to give him room to make decisions. He is learning. Room to make decisions. Dylan had been here 2 weeks, and suddenly he had room to make decisions that could damage relationships I had spent years building. I hung up the phone, feeling like the ground was shifting under my feet. That evening I met my best friend Tyler for a beer. Tyler was our head machinist, had been with the company for 8 years. He knew the operation as well as I did. When I told him what was happening, he did not look surprised. "Man, your dad is setting you up. Dylan is going to push you out." "That is my brother," I said. "And my father. They would not do that." Tyler took a long drink, then set down his glass. "Wake up, Oakley. You really think Frank brought Dylan in to help you? He brought him in to replace you?" "That is not true." But Tyler's words stayed with me all night. The breaking point came in week 3. I discovered Dylan had approved a major commitment without consulting me. A new client, Blackwell Manufacturing, had reached out about a potential contract. Large order, good money, but aggressive timeline. I was reviewing the details when I realized Dylan had already promised them delivery. 40 custom units in 2 weeks. I felt my chest tighten. That timeline was impossible. Absolutely impossible. With our current capacity and workforce. I found Dylan in the break room, scrolling through his phone. "We need to talk about Blackwell." He looked up. "What about them? You promised them 40 units in 2 weeks." "We cannot do that. It is physically impossible." "Why not?" "Because each unit requires 8 hours of machine time, quality checking, finishing. With our current setup, we can produce maybe 20 units in 2 weeks if we push hard and nothing goes wrong. 40 is not realistic." Dylan stood up defensive. "Then we need to expand capacity." "Expand capacity, Dylan, that takes months of planning, capital investment, hiring and training new people. You cannot just snap your fingers and double our production overnight. Maybe that is the problem. Maybe you think too small." I pulled out my phone and called Frank, putting it on speaker. When he answered, I explained the situation as calmly as I could. Dylan committed us to a timeline we cannot meet. If we fail to deliver, Blackwell will never work with us again, and they will probably tell other potential clients we are unreliable. This could seriously damage our reputation. There was a pause. Then Frank said, "Dylan, what do you think?" My brother jumped in immediately. "I think Oakley is being negative. We need to think bigger. If we want to grow, we have to take risks." "This is not risk," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "This is a guaranteed failure." "We do not have the capacity," Frank sighed. "Oakley, maybe you have gotten too comfortable with how things are. Dylan brings fresh perspective. Sometimes we need someone who is not afraid to push boundaries. Comfortable." After 12 years of early mornings and late nights of missing family events and weekends to make sure orders shipped on time, I was comfortable. I felt something break inside my chest. Not anger. Worse, disappointment so deep it felt like grief. "Fine," I said quietly. "Do whatever you want." I hung up and left the building. That night I sat alone in my apartment staring at the walls. For the first time in 12 years, I felt like a stranger in my own workplace. The place I had poured everything into suddenly did not feel like mine anymore. And the worst part was, knowing my father saw my dedication not as strength but as complacency, as something that needed to be disrupted by Dylan's reckless enthusiasm. I barely slept that night. 1 week later, Frank called me into the conference room. Dylan was already there, leaning back in his chair with an expression I can only describe as smug. My father sat at the head of the table, hands folded. He did not waste time with pleasantries. "Oakley, I have been thinking about the structure here. I need you to step back from day-to-day operations. Dylan will be taking over as operations manager. You will move to a consulting role." The words did not fully register at first. Consulting role. What did that even mean, Dad? I run this place. I know every client, every process, every employee. I know which machines need maintenance before they break down. I know which orders to prioritize when we are running behind. I know who to call when we have a problem at 2 in the morning. A consulting role. What does that mean? It means you will be available to advise Dylan as he steps into your position. You will mentor him, help him transition smoothly. This is not mentoring. You are replacing me. Frank's face hardened. I am doing what is best for the family business. Dylan is family too. He deserves his chance, just like you got yours. I earned my chance. I spent 12 years earning it. Dylan has been here 3 weeks and has not learned a single thing. He shows up late, ignores protocols, makes promises we cannot keep, and you are rewarding him for it. Dylan sat up straighter. That is not fair. I am trying. I turned on him, my control finally slipping. You do not even know how to read a production schedule. You cannot operate a single machine. You do not know the names of half our clients. You have done nothing but complain since you got here, and now Dad is handing you my job. Enough. Frank stood up, his voice sharp. That is enough, Oakley. You are being selfish. After everything I have given you, a career, a position, stability, and this is how you repay me, by refusing to help your own brother. The word came then, the one that made everything crystal clear. You are ungrateful. I built this company from nothing. I decide how to run it. And right now I am deciding that Dylan needs this opportunity more than you need your pride. Ungrateful. After 12 years. After every sacrifice, every late night, every weekend I gave up. Ungrateful. The word hit me like a physical blow. I stood there for a moment, looking at my father, then at my brother. Dylan would not meet my eyes. And suddenly I knew. Tyler had been right. This was not about helping Dylan grow. This was about pushing me out. About replacing competence with blood relation, because Frank felt guilty that his younger son had not found success yet, and no amount of loyalty or hard work would change his mind. I stood up slowly. My voice came out calmer than I felt. You are right. It is your company. You built it. But it will not be anything without the people who actually run it. I walked out of the conference room and went straight to the production floor. I found Harold checking parts near the quality control station. Tyler was working on a custom bracket setup. Sarah, our floor supervisor, was reviewing the schedule for next week. I gathered them in a corner away from the other workers. I need to tell you something, I said quietly. Frank is handing operations to Dylan. I am out. Dylan? That kid does not know the first thing about running production. I know. Tyler set down his tools. If you are out, I am out. I am not working for someone who does not know what he is doing. Sarah nodded. We all are. This place runs because we know what we are doing. Without you coordinating everything, it will fall apart in days. I am not asking you to leave, I said, though my chest felt tight with gratitude. But I cannot stay and watch everything we built crumble because Frank wants to prove something to himself about Dylan. I went back to my office and started packing. 12 years fit into 2 cardboard boxes. Photos of me and Frank from the early days back when I was 19 and learning how to weld. Certificates from safety training courses. Thank you notes from clients who appreciated our work. A coffee mug Harold had given me as a joke that said "World's Okayest Boss." I carried the boxes to my truck, while Frank and Dylan watched from the office window upstairs. Dylan said something to Frank. I could not hear it, but I could guess. He will be back. He is just emotional. He needs me. Frank did not respond, just stood there with an expression I could not read. Maybe doubt. Maybe stubbornness. I did not care anymore. I drove away at 2 in the afternoon and did not look back. What happened next happened fast. I heard about it later from Tyler, who called me each evening with updates. Day 1, the afternoon I left Patterson Industrial, called with an urgent issue. One of their machines had broken down, and they needed replacement parts immediately, the kind of emergency order we handled regularly. Dylan answered the phone. He had no idea what to do. He did not know which parts they needed, did not know how to check if we had materials in stock, did not know which machines to use or who to assign the job to. By the time he figured out he should ask someone for help, 3 hours had passed. The wrong parts were almost shipped. Patterson's plant manager, furious, called Frank directly and said if this was how the company operated now, they would take their business elsewhere. That contract represented 30% of our annual revenue. Day 2. Harold and Tyler did not show up to work. Sarah sent her resignation via email at 7 in the morning. Dylan tried to run production with the remaining staff, mostly junior workers, who did not have the experience to handle complex orders. A critical machine broke down. I had always maintained a detailed schedule for preventive maintenance, knew exactly when each machine needed service. Dylan did not even know the schedule existed. The machine sat broken while Dylan tried to figure out who to call for repairs. Blackwell Manufacturing called asking about their order, the impossible promise Dylan had made. He had no answer for them. By afternoon, 2 more long-term employees quit. Day 3 was when everything collapsed completely. Frank finally understood the scope of what was happening. Production had ground to a complete halt. There were not enough trained people to run the machines. The few employees left did not know which orders to prioritize. Miller Supply, our old aluminum supplier, contacted Frank directly. Dylan had canceled their contract, and the new cheap supplier had delivered defective materials. Rework was going to cost thousands of dollars and weeks of time. 3 major clients were threatening legal action for missed deliveries. Frank's phone exploded with angry messages, emails, calls from people demanding to know what had happened to the reliable company they had worked with for years. That evening, Tyler sent me a photo. It showed Frank sitting alone in the middle of the production floor, surrounded by scattered papers. Angry emails printed out. Resignation letters. Supplier invoices for materials that could not be used. Dylan was nowhere in sight. Tyler's text said, "He called in sick this morning. Has not answered his phone since." The photo showed my father looking older than I had ever seen him, shoulders slumped, staring at nothing. I looked at that photo for a long time. I did not feel victorious. I did not feel angry. I just felt sad. Sad that it had come to this. Sad that Frank had valued his guilt over Dylan more than he valued what we had built together. Sad that pride was still keeping him from picking up the phone and calling me. But I also knew something with absolute certainty. I was not going back. Not to that. A week after I walked out, I got a phone call from a number I recognized. Mr. Raymond, the owner of Patterson Industrial. We had worked together for 8 years. He was a straight-talking man in his 60s who valued reliability over everything else. "Oakley," he said when I answered, "I heard what happened. Your father called to apologize for the mess with our emergency order. He explained you had left." "Yes, sir, I did. Then I want you to know something. We have worked with your company for almost a decade, but we have not been working with your father. We have been working with you. You are the one who always picked up the phone. You are the one who made sure our orders were right. You are the one who understood our needs." He paused. "I am not interested in working with anyone else. So here is what I am proposing. We need help building out a small production capacity for some of our standard parts. Would you be interested in consulting for us directly? Help us set it up properly?" I sat down, stunned. "Mr. Raymond, I appreciate that, but I do not know if I am ready to jump into something new. Think about it. No pressure. But Oakley, you are good at what you do. Really good. And that skill does not disappear just because your father could not see it." We talked for another 20 minutes. By the end of the call, I had agreed to meet him the following week to discuss details. 2 weeks later, Tyler called me. "Harold and I have been talking. We want to start something with you." "Start what? A shop. Small operation. We do not need to be big. Just good. Focus on quality, not volume. Take on clients who actually value the work." The idea terrified me. It also excited me in a way I had not felt in months. We met at a diner, the 3 of us, and spent 4 hours sketching plans on napkins. Nothing fancy, nothing huge. Just a small operation where we could do good work without the drama. Those first few days after leaving had been brutal. I was angry, hurt. I felt betrayed by the 2 people I had trusted most in my life. But slowly, something shifted. I started to realize I was free. Free from constantly trying to prove my worth. Free from carrying the burden of being good enough for Frank's approval. I had spent 12 years building something I thought was ours, but it had always been his. His company. His rules. His decision to throw it away. Now I had a chance to build something that was actually mine. Tyler and I talked late into the night, sometimes sitting in his garage while we planned. "Maybe this was supposed to happen," he said once. "Maybe you were supposed to learn you did not need Frank's approval to be good at what you do." I thought about that a lot. A month after I left, Frank showed up at the small workshop Tyler, Harold, and I had rented. It was nothing impressive, just a 1,500 square foot space with 3 machines and a lot of potential. I heard his truck pull up and knew it was him before I even looked. He walked in looking haggard, older, like the last month had aged him 5 years. "Oakley," he said. "Just my name. I wiped my hands on a rag and waited. "Dylan quit," Frank said after a moment. 2 weeks after you left. He said it was not for him. Too much pressure. Too much responsibility. He laughed, a bitter sound. I had to hire an outside operations manager. Guy wants $60,000 more than I was paying you, and he does not understand our clients, our culture, any of it. We lost 3 major accounts. Revenue is down 50%. I am barely keeping the doors open. I did not say anything. What was there to say I was wrong? Frank's voice cracked slightly. I thought I could make Dylan into something he is not. I thought if I just gave him the right opportunity, pushed hard enough, he would step up. And I took you for granted. I took for granted that you would always be there, always be loyal, no matter how I treated you. I am sorry, son. I am really sorry. The apology sat in the air between us. Part of me wanted to accept it, to tell him it was okay to make everything better like I always had. But I could not. Not this time. Dad, I would have helped Dylan if you had asked me as a partner. If you had respected my input and worked with me instead of ordering me around like an employee. But you did not see me as a partner. You saw me as a tool, something useful that you could replace when you found something shinier. That is not true. It is true, and you know it. When Dylan wanted to change suppliers, you let him, even though I explained why it was a bad idea. When he made impossible promises to clients, you backed him up and called me negative. When I gave you 12 years of my life, you called me ungrateful. My voice stayed steady. I am not angry anymore, Dad. I am just sad. Sad that it took losing everything for you to realize what you had. Frank looked around the workshop. Come back. We can rebuild together. I will make it right. I do not think I can go back. Not to how things were. You made a choice about what mattered more to you. And I have made a choice too. So that is it. You are just done with me. I am not done with you. You are my father, but I am done with trying to earn your respect by sacrificing my own. Frank left after that. We did not hug, did not shake hands. He just walked back to his truck and drove away. We talk now monthly dinners that are awkward but honest. He asks about my business. I ask about his. We do not talk about what happened, not directly, but it is there between us. Always there. He is learning to see me as separate from the company he built. I am learning that I do not need his approval to know my worth. 6 months after I left the business, Tyler, Harold, and I had grown to 10 clients. Not big numbers, but solid ones. Companies that valued quality and reliability. We worked hard, but the work felt different now. It was not about proving anything. It was about craftsmanship. About doing something well because it mattered, not because someone was watching. I thought about Dylan sometimes. No resentment. He had been caught in the middle of Frank's expectations, just like I had. Dylan was still figuring out who he was. Maybe one day he would find his thing. It just was not metalwork, and that was okay. The hardest lesson I learned through all of this was about loyalty. I had always believed loyalty meant staying no matter what. Enduring. Proving your dedication through sacrifice. But I learned loyalty to family does not mean sacrificing your self-respect. It does not mean accepting mistreatment because someone shares your blood. Real loyalty, healthy loyalty, requires mutual respect. It requires seeing each other clearly and valuing what each person brings. My father taught me everything about metalwork, about running a business, about precision and quality, but he never taught me that my value was not tied to his approval. I had to learn that on my own. The business did not implode because I left. It imploded because it was built on the wrong foundation. Favoritism over competence. Guilt over respect. Blood relation over earned trust. Those cracks were always there. My leaving just exposed them. Sometimes people ask me if I regret walking out, if I wish I had stayed and tried harder to make it work. The answer is no. Walking away was the hardest thing I have ever done, but staying would have destroyed me. In the empty space that leaving created, I found something I had lost along the way. Myself. The version of me that existed before I tied my entire identity to being good enough for my father. That version is quieter, more confident, less desperate for validation. I like him better. So let me ask you something. Have you ever had to walk away from something you built? Have you ever had to choose between loyalty and self-respect? Drop a comment below and tell me your story. I read every single one, and I promise you are not alone in this. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel if you want to hear more real stories about standing up for yourself and setting boundaries. And please share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who is struggling with family expectations or workplace dynamics, where their value is not being recognized. Maybe your share will be exactly what they need today. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it was not easy to hear, but I hope it reminded you that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from what is breaking you. And in that walking away, you might just find the freedom to become who you were always meant to be. Take care of yourselves out there. Remember your worth, and I will see you in the next one.